indications that China is ready to put the brakes on its financial institutions that deal with North Korea. This is the teeth that so many have said without which sanctions could never work. So if China follows through, and that's the if here, it is a significant diplomatic win for this administration. And it may show that the tough talk from the president and from Nikki Haley may have had an impact on the world body. This is earlier today.
Today I'm announcing a new executive order I just signed that significantly expands our authorities to target individuals, companies, financial institutions that finance and facilitate trade with North Korea. Our new executive order will cut off sources of revenue that fund North Korea's efforts to develop the deadliest weapons known to humankind. I want to be clear, the order targets only one country, and that country is North Korea.
What this does is take it a step further. This says anyone that deals with North Korea, any financial institution that deals with North Korea is going to be punished. We have said multiple times, the president said it, members of his team have said it, we don't want war. That's the last thing anyone wants. But at the same time, we're not going to run scared. If, for any reason, North Korea attacks the United States or our allies, the U.S. will respond, period.
So the leader of North Korea responding to this tonight, Kim Jong Un, in his inimitable way, declaring, I am now thinking hard about the response that he could have expected when he allowed such eccentric words to trip off his tongue. I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard, he says, with fire. So that from Kim Jong Un tonight. Former counterterrorism advisor to Vice President Cheney and Fox News contributor Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz is with us this evening, and Fox News political analyst and co-host to The Five, Juan Williams. Big developments over the course of this whole week and really punctuated with this news about China tonight. Your thoughts?
But I'm fine with the tough rhetoric that we heard this week from the president and from Ambassador Haley. And we're seeing now that that was meant for the Chinese and not for the North Koreans. That's the only way I think we're going to get the Chinese to change their calculus, in the sense of they're fine with the status quo. It's America's problem. It's a Japanese problem. It's a South Korean problem. It's not their problem. Now with these sanctions and secondary sanctions on Chinese entities, we're making it their problem. And I think they finally believe that either the Chinese can handle it on their terms or we're going to handle it on our terms through military means. I mean,
President Trump and at one point candidate Trump has spoken out very strongly about China, Juan, throughout the course of all of this. You know, is it time for the naysayers to perhaps give him some props on how this is going, at least at this point? We don't know how it's what the outcome will be.
No. So what we do know is that they had 2 votes in the Security Council of the United Nations, unanimous votes, to impose sanctions on the North Koreans. China participated in both of those votes, Martha. Today, you have an increase in terms of the power of the sanctions, in terms of the banking system. But some of the banking sanctions had been in place earlier. The question is now, how are the Chinese viewing this? And from what I can pick up, the Chinese think, why is everyone pointing at us and blaming us? This is a bigger problem. Yeah. But from President Trump's perspective, he has said it really is the Chinese who have leverage at this moment. Right. And he is trying to force them to maximize that leverage. Does fire and fury, does Rocket Man serve that purpose? I'm not sure. I think a lot of people then say, well, wait a second. Why is he being so militaristic? We're trying to work this out. The Russians even said that. You know, the Chinese, though, can choke North Korea off tomorrow economically, if they want to, if they see it in their interest. And only the Chinese. And only the Chinese. So I do think, you know, it was right to direct the remarks at them. But the Chinese are very good at kind of having a PR play. They agree with UN sanctions, and then they don't enforce them. Yep. They kind of dial things up, and then as soon as we shift our attention away, which as Americans we're terrible about doing, then they kind of go back to the same old behavior. So that's exactly right. I have some optimism here, but we have to hold their feet to the fire. I mean, I think you have to, you know, give credit where credit is due, that the ball has been moved farther this week on this measure than we have seen in years and years. Yeah. However, you think about the, you know, even the Paris Accord and the pollution agreements. Well, you do this now, we'll start that in 2026 or down the road. So I think it remains to be seen what the Chinese really mean
by this agreement, and we haven't seen the letter of it. It's basically a verbal communication that there has been some agreement. I also noted today that the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, was very careful to not sort of lay it all on them. He's saying anyone who does trade with North Korea. This is a universal proclamation here. Your thoughts on that?
Well, there are other entities. There's the Russians that do business. Yeah. There's some other folks in both the Indians and other folks in East Asia. So it should be anyone. And because, we are essentially, the other word that he used was sanctioning any entity. So that essentially means any entity that does business with North Korea can no longer do business with the United States and is kicked out of the financial system and can't use U.S. dollars. That is significant. What's also significant is before it was individual banks, individual entities. Now we're talking the entire Chinese financial system. But the proof is in the pudding of whether they follow through, and we have to stay on top of it.
Yeah. Do you think they will, Juan?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing is, even as we're having this discussion, we don't know exactly what Kim Jong Un wants in North Korea. We have not engaged in these talks. He doesn't want to talk to us, apparently. What we hear from the North Koreans as they spoke at the UN was the kind of language that you cited at the top, that this is ridiculous, this is rude, and if he thinks it's going to scare us, it's just the dog's bark, and we're not afraid of the dog, and all that kind of stuff. So we have this kind of schoolyard back and forth, Martha. I don't know. I do know this. I sense that he is, as President Trump said, somewhat suicidal. I don't think that he would hesitate to punish his own people in order to maintain this kind of posture of saying, I am in defiance of the great United States and the great military powers, and that's what North Korea stands for. I think we've got to get inside his head somehow. The sanctions may work. I hope they work. But I think we've got to be resolute, not only with the Chinese, but with ourselves.
And we have to see what the response is from President Trump. These sort of bombastic words coming in from Kim Jong Un. This is a very delicate time where you don't really want to necessarily lay the inappropriate tweet at this moment. Would you agree with that or no?
Well, I think we have to leave the military option on the table. And I think the tough rhetoric has perhaps changed the calculus in the region. And I'm hoping it'll change Kim Jong Un's calculus. That's still a hope. Right now, he believes he has to have this program for his survival. We need to make him believe that if he attains this program and it's operational, it will guarantee his destruction. And whether we do that through tough rhetoric or whether we do that through diplomatic or economic or even cyber and other issues, we have
By
to
the way, but the contrary thought is that we may have to negotiate on the idea that they become a nuclear power.
I am not willing to accept it. One of the things that's not discussed a lot is that our ground-based missile defense is only 50% effective, and of those 50%, they're highly, highly scripted. These are the ones that are in Alaska and California. I'm not willing to bet millions of lives on that.
All right, we will continue. Thank you very much, gentlemen.